Okay, so we're going to be working on this design today, which is going to, enforce what we learned last time, which is the flex layout. And anytime you want to work on a design, before you jump into the coding part, you need to know how you are going to lay out the page content. That's the first thing you should always do. This thing I used to do it in my head, or because they are just starting, you can just put a line around everything for you to know where you have to put all the elements on the page. And the first thing that always come there is the body, which is what you'll be generating there automatically, which is what we have here. So this one is always going to be body. But inside the body, if you look at it, there is a box there that is grouping all the content together. So I will be using another element here, which is the one that will hold all these contents. But inside this box, if you look at it, it's quite the stuff is divided into two here. If you are to do this design, it actually been divided into two sections. The first one is where you have this image at the top. So this is the first one where you have this image at the top. Let me draw this thing very well. So there are two sections inside this box. The first one is the section that is holding this image, and the second one is the one that is holding all these contents together. So when you want to do this design, the first thing you need to do is to look at how you are going to structure the page, which is very, very important, because if you don't structure this thing correctly, when you want to apply CSS to all these elements, you might be seeing some elements are not positioned correctly where you want them to be. Why? Because your layout from the HTML side is not done properly. And if it's not done properly there, if you don't do it properly, then you will not get what you are looking for, the arrangement that you are looking for there. So if you want to do this design now, the first thing you need to do, look at the design. So this entire yellow here is the body. The entire yellow is the body, but inside the body we have this box. And inside this box too is divided into separate division or section there. So if you are to look at it, we have the box, which is going to hold everything inside it. And apart from that, inside that box, we have two sections. The first section is where we have this image. So if you are to draw the wireframe, this is how it's going to be. So what we are doing right now is what we call wireframe, which is kind of like a rough sketch of what you want to do. So we have this top section, and apart from this top section here, we have this other section here too that is holding all these content together. So this second one here is holding the content together. But apart from that, inside this second one, you are now having this box or this button. This is a button here, or anything that you can use there. If it's something that is clickable, you are going to use button. If something that is taking you from one place to another, that's you use your a tag. And if it's not doing any of these things, you can use any other element to represent it. This one is just a normal paragraph there here, while this one is the heading on the page. And if you look at it too, we have another paragraph here which is having this text. But if you look down here, this one is not that simple, because there are two things that are placed side by side here. So here you are going to have another container. Down here you are going to have another container. If you don't put these two items in a container, you can't just put them side by side. It will not work. And when you want to put things side by side, you are going to use flex. And when you want to use flex, don't forget you need flex container and you need the flex item. So if you are to look at it here now, the flex container here is going to be this line. So this is going to be the flex container, and inside it we are going to have the flex item. The first item is this image here. Let me use another color. The first item here is going to be this image. The second item here is going to be name. So the two of them together inside this container, when you display the container as flex, it's going to put them side by side automatically. And from there, you can now align or justify based on where you want to place all these items inside the container. But if you want to do this design, this is the first thing you have to do. You have to create the frame, which is a wireframe for your design, which is the layout. So you have to create the layout frame. So if you have to look at the design, now this is the wireframe for it. So we have the container inside the body, which is wrapping all the content. And inside this container, we have this top section here where we are going to have the image. So here is where we are going to place the image. And the second one, we are going to have a chip here, which is that yellow stuff that I see there. You are going to have the dates. You are going to have the title. We are going to have the paragraph. And down here, we are going to have a container because there are two items here placed side by side. And in order for you to place them side by side, you need to put them in a container. And once you display that container as flex, it will place the item automatically side by side. But you know, you can actually change the direction to the other one. So this is the first thing you have to do first. Then based on this wireframe now, you start creating the element that follow this structure. So when you want to start creating the element now, you keep creating all your element by following this structure here that you generated from the design. So this is the wireframe, but if you have to look at the actual design, this is what is here. But you don't just put things anyhow here. Even though there is no line, everything in CSS is just box. It's just because you are not showing the line, but you know how to show the line by just applying the border on your element there. So in order for us to build this now, the first thing we need to do is to follow the structure that we just generated right now, which is this box here. So this box now, what do we have there? The box is telling us that we need a container inside the body, which is going to group everything together. So this container now, I'm going to use main to represent it. You can use any other grouping element. If you like, you can use section, you can use div, you can use aside and a lot of them. But here, main, don't forget, I mentioned that main is always being used to group all the major content on the page together. So, and that's the reason why I'm using main here. Main is going to be the box, but inside the main, we are going to have two sections. The section for the image, so we are going to have two sections. The section for this image and the section for all this content down here. So here now, I'm going to have the two sections. So the first one, we have this section. You can use section here, or you can use header, you can use div, and a lot of other grouping elements. But right now, I'm using section, which is the first one, which I'm going to give a class in order for me to select it or to target it easily from CSS there. So I'm going to give it image wrapper. That's the name, or that's the class name. You can give it anything, but I always love to use a name that is describing what this element is doing there. So by the time you are reading the HTML, you already know what is going on the page without you seeing the output based on the name of the class. So I'm going to have another section too, and this section is going to be content wrapper. So I'm going to call it content wrapper because they are just grouping under element, or they are wrapping under, or they are wrapping other elements are there. So that's why they are called wrapper. But it can be, you can call it anything. Sometimes you see some people calling it container. So they are just doing the same thing. So I have this content wrapper. Inside this section of this image wrapper, that's where we're going to be having this image. So we need to include this image. And inside this section for this content wrapper, that's where we're going to put all this content there like that. So what do we need to do now? We need to start putting all the necessary content. But how do you put the image? You already know what to use when you want to include image, because this image is already there if you download the material from online there, because there is a way of you downloading the material, which is something I have here already. So I'm going to copy all the necessary materials that we need for this design. So I'll go to the design folder where I have all these items, and I will go under the images. So just open the images audit, so it's known as asset here, but for some design it will be images are there. So as you can see, this one is including font and it's including the image. So the only thing I need right now is the image. So I'll be talking about the font in other design there. So I don't want to waste time because we are still learning. So don't let us include font for now, something that we can add later on there. So I'm going to copy these images and put it under this my folder where I have all the other files. So if I open the images, as you can see, we have this illustration article and we have this image avatar here. The image avatar is the guy down here, which is the image of the guy that is down here, as you can see. And this illustration article here is the image that is up here. So every design that you're going to be working with, once you get the material there, your own is just to copy it into your project folder, these images, and you are going to have all the necessary image. You are not to go online to start looking for any of them. No, once you download the material from that site, you always have the complete assets that you need for the design, including the text that you are seeing on this page. All these texts, they are inside that file there. I'm going to share this file on the group, so I'm going to zip it and send it to the group so you can unzip it and you see all the necessary material. So under this place, we are going to see the index file. So this index.html, this is where you are going to see all the text for the design. So any of the text you are seeing on any of the design that I will be sending later on, just check this index.html. You see all the text that you need. So you don't need to start looking at the design and start typing yourself. All this thing has been prepared for you. As you can see, the learning that you are seeing on the stuff is here already. Let me put them side by side so that you see how it used to look like. The difference there is that it's not going to be arranged like this. You'll be the one that will have to copy the text and put them in the appropriate HTML tag. As you can see, they are not putting any of the text inside, or they are not doing any arrangement for you. You'll be the one that will arrange it in a proper way. The only thing they are just doing is to give you the text, but they are not arranging it. As you can see, they are not generating any element here. The only thing they are just doing is to put the text, separate them according to the way it is here, and your own is just to copy the text and put them in the appropriate place when you are generating all the content for the page. So don't forget, there is something like main section and so forth like that inside the HTML that will be given to you from the design. Your own is just to open it, copy the text, and put it at the appropriate place using the correct tags that you are supposed to use to generate the same structure that you have from the design image. So here now, inside this place, which is this image wrapper here, I'm going to open it, include my image, which is coming from the assets folder there. So the dot slash, don't forget that's the current folder. I will have access to my images, and from there I will have access to this illustration article, which is the image that is being used at that section there, which is our first section that have the image. So once the code is saved and we go to the page, you're going to see that the image is going to show, but it's not going to be arranged properly the way it is on the design. So you have to use CSS later on to make sure that all your text, the design, are actually following what you are looking at from the original design out there. So let me wait for this thing to load, and once it's done loading there, go back to the page. We should have the image if everything is connected correctly. So let me wait for it to load. What's wrong with VS Code today? Let me pause. So as you can see here now, this is the image. But if you look at it, it's not really looking like the original one from the design. If you look at the design, the image is actually curved. So you know that you are the one that will do all this work. This is the design, this is the image. But this is how it's going to be by the time you apply the CSS. So if you look at the edge, see that it is a curve. So now you know how to do that one. But the major thing is that you arrange your content correctly. So the next thing we need to do, because we are done with that section, we are done with this first section. The only thing we have there is just the image. Where we have a lot of content here is this second section here, where we have all these texts. And if you look at it based on our wireframe, so we have this box, which is the one that is containing this learning. Apart from that one, we have the next one, which is containing the dates, the next one, which is containing the title, this big one here, which is the paragraph, and this last one, which is another container that is grouping the avatar and the name of the guy together. So let's put all this in our own layout too. So inside this section, we're going to start with this first one. This is not a button, and this is not a link. If it is a link, maybe it's something you can click, then we can use the a tag here. So let's assume it's a link that once you click on it, it will take you to all the page, it will take you to a page where you have all the article about learning. So since it's going to be a link, this is something that I can click, so I'm going to use the a tag for that. But if it's something that is not clickable, or is not taking you to any place, or is not performing any action for you, you can either use the div element or any other element at that place, and it's still going to work. The major thing is your styling. Even though right now this a will not give me this style, I will be the one that will have to apply it from the CSS there. So I'm done with this one, which is going to be this learning. But normally this is supposed to be taking us to something like blogs. So it's going to take us to blogs.html, which is something we don't have right now, but I just put these links there. But normally we're supposed to have something like blogs inside this project pick to here. But since we don't have anything like that, if you click on the link, it will give you error. But this one is just to showcase what you'll be having there if it is a proper site that is connecting different pages together. And the reason why it is A is because this thing, I can click on it, and once I click on it, it will take you to a page that shows all the blogs that is related to learning, and that is why I'm using A. But if it's not something that is taking me to a different place, using A is just waste of a tag there, because if the user click on it, it will be doing what is expected of that tag there. So the next one is this one, which is this publish, the date that this thing is published. So if I want there, I will use P for this, which is going to be this publish. So I don't need to be typing all these text, just like what I mentioned there. All this text has been given to you. Your own is just to copy and paste the text into your tag. They're not going to generate the tags for you. You have to be the one to generate the necessary tag. So the only thing they're going to be giving you there is a text. So yeah, this is our major content, or this is our major title of this page. So I'm going to use H1 for that section. But if you have a lot of other content on this page, and this one is not the major title, you know that you can't use H1 here. This one is going to be something like H3 or H2 and so forth like that, depending on the label of the heading. But since it's the only thing we have on this page is just this card here, and this is the title of that card, so I'm using H1 right now. But you can use H2, H3, H4, 5, 6, depending on the level of the heading that you want to work with. All of them will work. The major thing is your styling from the CSS there. So the next thing we have is this one here, which is the next one that follows. We are done with this. We are done with this. We are done with this. The next one we need to do is this one here, which is another paragraph again, like that. So this one now, in order to differentiate this paragraph from this paragraph here, I'm going to give them a class. Here, this one is going to be dates. Why this other one, this p tag here, I'm going to give this one to a class so that I can target each one of them without calling the p. Because if I copy, it will put this, whatever I'm doing on this one to this one, which is not the same thing. Because if you look at the color on this text, it's not the same thing as this one. So since they're having something that is not common there, so I need a class to target them easily without using some of these complex selector there. So I'm going to give this one to a class, which is going to be description. So I'm going to give it description. The name of the class is going to be description. So where am I going to get this description? Just go back to the file and copy the necessary text that is there, then paste. And once you are done, then everything is going to be on the page. And if I go to the page, it won't be arranged correctly because we've not applied any CSS. Even though some of this content will follow each other, but they are not really arranged the way we want them to be. Because if I expand this screen, you are going to see that a lot of things are not positioned correctly. So in order for it to work like that, we need to apply our flex property that we talked about in the last class here. So let's complete the last part of this second section, which is going to be this inner container here. And this inner container is going to contain two items. The first one is this image. The second one is the name of the guy there. And if you look at it, you look at this text, it's really bold. So since it's bold, you can use any other heading tag there, but I will be using H6 for that. But first, I need to have a group, which I'm going to call this div. So I'm going to use the div for the grouping here. And here I'm going to call it avatar group. Yeah. So this is a class that I'll be using to target it from the CSS. Inside it, we have the image. And inside this image, we have this image avatar. That's where the name is coming from. So that's the reason why you see that I'm calling this thing avatar group, because anything in this form, that's what we used to call them, avatar. So, or you can call it, just you call it DP, but we call it avatar like that. And that's the reason why I'm putting this one as avatar group, because we have the image and we have the name of the user. So here now I'm going to use H6 to represent that name, and the name is this Greg Upa here. And that's all from the HTML part. So we are done with the HTML. So from the HTML part, we have this main. The main is the one that is going to act as this entire box here, because all the content are limited to this box. So, and it have a separate background here. So this is going to be a box, and this box now, we are using this main element to represent it. But inside the box is divided into two. We have this top section here for the image, and we have this down section here for the other content. But inside this down section, we have this element here to represent the chip at the top, which I'm using the A tag. And the reason I'm using the A tag is because I want this thing to be clickable so that it can take you from one place to another there. So from this page now, index is going to take us to the blogs.html. We have something like that. And apart from that, we have this one here, which is this publish date. And I'm using this p tag here to represent it. And this title of this card, I'm using the H1 to represent it, followed by this description here of the blog, because this is a short description of the blog based on this title. And apart from that, we have this down area here that have this avatar and the name. But in order for you to put this avatar and the name side by side like this, you need to, without affecting other content on the page, you need to put them in a group. And that's what I'm doing here with this div that is having this class avatar group, so that I can target it easily from CSS there by using the class selector. And inside it, we have the image, which is this avatar, and I have this, the name, which is going to be by the side of the avatar. So the next thing we need to do is to connect the CSS to our page. We are done arranging the content on the page. This is very important. This thing that you are seeing here that is small is very important, because if you don't arrange your content correctly on the page or inside the HTML, when you start applying your CSS, some of these elements will not arrange that properly. They will not be arranged properly the way you want them to be on the page, because you are not grouping them according to the way it's supposed to be grouped. So anytime you want to use flex, you know that there must be a flex container. So, and inside it, you are going to have flex items. And based on that arrangement now, you can display the container as flex. And from that container, you can control how you want to move all the items that is inside it. So the next thing we need to do now is to include our CSS, which we are going to use the link. When you want to include the CSS, use the link, which is going to generate the style sheet link for you. The next thing you just need to do is to point the location of the style there, which is coming from the same folder. And since they are coming from the same folder, just type the name and the extension of the CSS, which is going to connect our page. But nothing is changing because in our CSS file we don't have anything. So here now, this is where we start cooking the page to look the way we want it to be. But here I mentioned it last time that anytime you are working on a page, there are some silly settings or property that the browser is applying on some of these your element on the page. And some of these settings you don't really need them because the browser is doing something you don't want. Almost all that, like all the time you need to apply this reset, we call it reset, to remove some of this default styling that the browser is applying on the page. And this is a minimal reset that you can use. This is not all, this is just the minimal reset. And how do you target every element on the page so that you can reset this thing on them? We are going to use the universal selector, which is this asterisk. Asterisk is going to select everything on the page. And what do we want to reset? We want to reset the margin of everything that is on the page to 0. We don't want it to have any margin. Look at it here, the spacing here, the spacing here, all the spacing you are seeing here, they are margin that the browser is applying by default. But I don't need them. The same thing padding too. I don't want anything there. I will apply it myself anywhere I need to apply padding. The other thing you need to do here is the box sizing, because this thing too is very important. When you are dealing with the width and the height later on and you are using padding and the border, the browser doesn't care about the box. You only care about the content. So which means you apply a width of 300 pixels, it will only give the content. It doesn't give the box that width. So which means if you are now applying padding and margin later on, they can increase the box because the browser is not calculating anything for you. You have to be the one that will have to do that calculation yourself. But you need to give the browser to do the work for you. And that's the reason why we have this box sizing. How is the browser going to be giving this sizing to the box? Do you want it to be on the content or do you want it to be on the box? The one we need is the box. We want it to calculate everything up to the box, not to the not on the content alone. Don't focus on the content, focus on the entire box when you are doing the calculation or when you are doing the subtraction or addition of the padding along with the width or height of the box there. So these are the minimum setting you always do. Anytime you are building, anytime you are creating any page, this is the minimum setting or that you are going to be using there to reset some of the content you have on the page. And if I save it now, look at it before I save, there's some white space around this image. But once I save now, you see that those white space now has been removed because we've removed some of this default styling that the browser is using for this margin and padding. And as you can see now, there is no space in between all these text again because I will be the one that will apply it and it's going to use whatever I'm using, not that it will be creating unnecessary space that I don't want there on the box. So once you connect your CSS to the HTML, the next thing you need to do is to do this basic reset. And after this basic reset, you can now continue with other resets that you want to do on the page. And that's this link here. I don't really like this my A tag to be having this underline. And at the same time, the color is using here, I don't want it. I always want it to be using the same color that is coming from the body. So if I change the color from the body or the parent of this box here, it should always follow the same color that is coming from the parent. But by default, A doesn't do that. It has its own color, and that is why it's using this blue and it's having this underline here. So I'm going to target the A. The color here should always be inherit. And what this inherit is doing is that whatever the color that the parent of this element is using, that's what it's going to use. So if the color of the parent is red, the A will be red. If the color of the parent is blue, A will be blue. But here now I'm talking about parent. Where is the parent? Look at the A that we are using. The parent here is section. So what I'm saying here is that if I apply a color from section, this A is going to use it. If the section is not applying any color, and if it's the parent of the section, maybe like this main or body, whatever color any one of them is using, A will always use what is coming from that parent on the grandparent there. But by default, A doesn't do that. A have its own special color, and it have this text decoration going on with it. But I don't want it to be like that. Anytime I'm changing color from the parent, I want it to change too, not that it's going to do something else. And this is what you should always do too when you are dealing with A, or when you are doing reset for A. Another thing we normally do when we are resetting A is to remove that line, which is the text decoration. And how do you remove it? We just do none, because I don't want my A to have any line. As you can see, A now looks like your P tag, but it's not P tag. It's still A, just that it's taking the color from its parent based on what we did here. I did not give it any color. What I just do is color should be inherit. So which means it's going to inherit whatever the color that the parent is using. So which means here now, if I do section and if I say the color should be yellow, that A too will be yellow automatically, because it's inheriting this color from its parent. Whatever I give to the parent for color, the A will inherit it. That's what this value is talking about. So if the color is red, everything on the page will be red. If it, the A will be red, or it will be blue or yellow, and so forth like that. And as you can see, the A too is now yellow. Let me change it to another color, which is going to be red, like this. You see that the A too is red. The reason why it is red is because of this property here. If this property is not there, A doesn't inherit anything from its parent. As you can see, it's not changing. Even though I'm changing the color from the parent, the A is not changing at all. And that's the reason why I'm resetting it here, so that anytime I apply something from the parent, it will pick it up if I don't change the A. But if I change the A later on, then it will pick whatever I'm using there. So if I use orange, then it will be using orange now, because I'm now talking to the A directly. But if I don't talk to the A directly and the parent is applying the color, it will inherit whatever the color that the parent is using there. So that's what this inherit is doing here. So another thing we normally do is the image. We always want the image. Look at the image now. The image is not really covering up the entire parent. So the image always maintain its original size by default. So if this image is bigger than this, it is going to maintain it. The smaller is going to stay there. But sometimes you might need to reset your image to always cover up its parent, which is known as this max width. So we have something known as max width, and it's going to be 100%. So when you have an image that is bigger than the parent, you can actually use this max width, so that the image is not going past whatever parent where it's being used. But if you want it to always cover its parent, whether it is small or it is big, then you can use the width. So when you say the width is 100, don't forget the width with a percentage is talking about the parent. So whatever the parent is having as width, this one will go there and take 100% of it. And that's the reason why you see that this image at the top cover up entire thing, and the one too down here. So that sometimes you need to do it like this, but for now I will not do it. But this is another reset that you can do on the page there. So another one that we can do is to change the font of all the text that we have on the page, because this is not the same thing as what we have on the design. Look at the CSS here. Look at the way the S is, and again to look at the CSS here. You see that they are not the same thing. So it's always good that you use a font that follow the design, so that when you are arranging the content on the page, everything is going to look like what you have from the design. Because if you look at the L here now, it's not the same thing as the L that we have here. So they are not the same. So in order for you to have the same stuff, we can actually target the HTML, and from there we can change the font family. And what is the family that is being used on this design? Anytime you are working on any particular design that is coming from that side, they will always show you the font that you are to use for that particular design. So how do you get the font? So that file will contain this style guide. You're always going to see the style guide here. So inside this style guide, if you open it, you are going to see the font you are to use and the colors they are going to be using for the design. So you are going to see all of them. So look at it now. For this design now, these are the colors. that design is using, which is something I'm going to copy and convert to variable. But if you scroll down, as you can see, the font that this design is using is known as this fig tree, which is something you can get from this link here. But how do we use this fig tree? In order for you to use it, if you want to use this link, you have to be connected to internet first. That's the first thing. So the next thing is to go to this link and copy, select the font you want to. Let me do it. Let us do it. We still have time. So the first thing you need to do is to copy the link that is given to you. If you are given a link, if you are not given a link, then you just go to Google, copy the name of the font and type it there. So it will give you the link for that font. But this design, if you use it, it will always give you the link. So where do we get the font? You go to this font for Google. Let me expand my browser so that I can see everything. So if you go to this font, google.com, type the name of the font, it will bring it out for you, and you click on it, and you generate all the necessary fonts that you need there. So this is the font, the Google font. As you can see, it's showing all of them, the Roboto, the this one, and a lot of them. But the one we are looking for is fig tree. So just type it there. As you can see, it will bring it out. That one, if you don't have the link. So once you click on it, it will take you to that font. But if you have the link already, you don't need to go there and start searching. Just copy the link that is given to you, paste it in the URL, and it will still take you to that page of the fonts there. So if I load it, it should take us to the page. As you can see, it will take us to the page, which is the same thing as you going to Google yourself and search for fig tree like this. So you can use any one of them. But when it comes as there, so what do we need to do? We need to get the fonts. So we need to get the font. So look at what I clicked there. You need to get the font. So once you get the font, it will take you to a page where you are going to see the code to copy. So it's that you download it yourself. If you want, you can download it yourself. But I don't want to do that. I want to connect to it online directly. So how do we connect to it online directly? We have this get embedded code. So you can download it or you get the embedded code, which is what you need. So look at it. So if you click on the get embedded code, it will show you how you can use it on the web using the link, or you can use it directly inside your CSS file. But I'm going to use the link for now. I will do the CSS file later on. So once you click on get embedded stuff there, so what you just need to do is to copy this link. Can you see? The instruction is here. So embed this code in the head of your HTML. So in order for you to be able to use their font, you just need to copy this entire link that is given to you there. Now this is external link now. The one we did before is internal, which is what we are using to link our CSS. But now we want to deal with the external one. Just copy the entire link and paste. This link is coming from Google. You are not to edit anything here. So the link is coming from Google, which is these two links, and this will always change based on the fonts you are looking for on Google there. So once you copy it, as you can see, it will connect to this link on Google, and from there it will select all this weight. So it's selecting the weight of 300 to this 900 here. There. But if you look at the design said we are only using the font weight of 500 and 800. Even though we are connecting 300 to 500, the only one we just use there is 500 and this 800. So how do we use the font now? We've connected to the font. So how do we use it? So after you are connecting, after you are done connecting to the font, the next thing is to use it. So how to use the font, everything is here too. You just need to go to where you want to use the font family and mention the name of the font. What is the name of the font that you are going to see the name of the font in the family? As you can see, the family, what is the name? The name is fig tree here. So that's what we need to use, which is the same thing as what we have on this place. So just copy the same thing here. But that's the name. Then go to where you want to use it, which is going to be inside our CSS font family here. But it's always good that you put the family at the end of whatever font you are using. But there's some time you might not have network to load this thing, because everything you are doing in this your HTML, it's going to connect to Google Fonts. And if there is no network, nothing will happen. So if there is no network, nothing will happen. The only time you see the font is when this thing is done, like the browser has to go there and download, and when the browser is done downloading the font, that's when you are going to see it. But at some time you might not have network, but you still want to design. Can you see now everything has changed right now? Because I'm connecting to internet, it's showing. But if I'm not connected to internet and I try to run this project again, you see that it will not show that font because the browser will not be able to download the font from Google. So instead of you just mentioning the name of the font, it's always good at the end of it that you put the family. And I know that this font is coming from the sans serif family. And how do I know that it's coming from sans serif? I've already explained it. It's one of our class, and NEPA just took the light now, so the network is going to choose. Let me pause. Um, Still loading. Where's my recording app? Oh God. Yeah, so I've connected to the fig tree, but now assuming that the network is not loading, then it's to fall back to the family here, which is going to pick the fonts that is the default one for this family on the user's system. So the system can be laptop, it can be phones, it can be anything that have access to our browser there. So every of these devices have a font that is coming from each family. So, and based on the one we are using right now, which is this fig tree, if it's not available or the network is not loading, then it's going to pick the default one from this sans serif like that. So the next thing we need to do here now is to work on the body. Don't forget, last time I told you that the way you'll be styling your content is the way you arrange or the way you structure your page. So starting from the HTML, go to the next one, which is body. Then from that, move to main. Then move to section, image if you need to do anything with it. Then you go to the next section. Then you start moving inside each one of them one by one like this. So that's how you style your content. The way you arrange your content on the page, that's the same way you keep picking them one by one and style. Not that you style the main, you now jump down to this div, you style it, and jump back to no. You arrange everything the way you put them in this and there's a reason why for that, because CSS doesn't care whether you arrange it like that or not. The reason is because when you need to modify anything, you already know where to go to change the content. Not that you start looking for where you put it, because you know that the way you arrange your content on the page, that's the same way you are arranging the selector in the CSS. So once you are in a particular area, you already know where to go to get the element and update the necessary thing you need to update or add there like that. So I'm done with the HTML. The next thing is the body, because that's the next one in line there. So the body here, there's a particular background that the design is using. So where's my design? Close my design. So block preview. Let me go back into the design, then open the stuff. So if you look at it, you see that the body is having the background of this yellow. But how do we get this yellow? Because every design you're working with is always good that you use the same color that that design is using. But based on the design material we are using right now, you don't need to stress yourself. All the necessary things that you need are already in the folder of the project. So you just need to go there and pick each one of them that you need. We are talking about the HTML, you are going to see it there, which is containing all the content like the text, which is inside the HTML. We are looking for the fonts and the colors that you have to use, it's always inside the style guide, which is something I've already opened here, which is where we kind of copy the links to connect to our fonts. And again, if you look at it, the font size of the paragraph is 16. which is what is there by default. So we don't need to do anything. So that we are told that the font size of the paragraph should be 16. But you know that that's the default font size already. So we don't need to do anything with the font size there like that. But we need the color, and these are the colors that are being used on the design. So for the yellow now, this is the color code. For the white, this is the color code. For the gray, this is the color code. For the black, this is the color code. So how do I do all this thing? So since all these things are something I will be using a lot, what I just need to do is to copy them and convert them to a variable, which is something that we've talked about in one of the class there. And again, I want this variable to be global one so that I can use it in any of the other selector. And you know, when you want to create a global variable, you put them in this root. What is variable? Variable is just a name that you're assigning to a value. So instead of you calling that value again and again in different places, what you call is the name. And anytime you need to modify the value, you only do it in one place, not that you do it in different place. And don't forget, I told you when we are talking about the variable, to create a variable, you are going to start with the double hyphen followed by the name of the variable like that. And anywhere you need to add space, you bridge them, you don't add space. Then in front of it, you are going to have the value. So here now, the value is this HSL here, while the name is anything before this column here, which is following this pattern that I have down here. So if I want to create it now, what I just need to do is to convert this yellow to a proper variable. And in order for it to be a proper variable, you just to put double hyphen there. It's already having one hyphen, so I just add one more to make it a proper variable. The same thing with this white, close the space, add the remaining hyphen there, close the last part, and as you can see, it's going to convert it to a proper variable. And the reason I'm creating it as a variable is because some of these colors you are going to use them in different places. So instead of you doing copy and paste, you can just represent them as a variable and you reuse it anywhere you need it. And in case you need to make any changes, you only change the variable value, and wherever you are using it, everything will just get updated. The stuff they are going to send to you is not going to be in a proper variable, but you can now convert it to a proper variable by following this pattern that we have here. I'm coming. The light is back, so let me pause it again. So this is how to create a variable. This is what you are having there before, but this is not a proper variable. Now for it to be a proper variable, it must start with double hyphen and it must end with this semicolon. That's when it's going to be treated as a proper variable, following this pattern that I have down here. So here now I can start using this color now. So what I want to use, I want to use the color for the background of the body, which is going to, how do you call a variable? To call a variable, you use var, and inside the var, you pass the name of the value that you are looking for. So if you look at it, this one is named yellow. This is what I want to use as a background. But what is the name attached to it? It is this yellow. So in order for you to use it, you call the var. Inside the var, you pass the name of the variable that you are looking for. And what this thing is going to do is that it will go to where this variable is defined and it will pick the value at that particular place. And if I save it now, you see that it's going to use that particular value for that variable. And if I modify the variable value to anything else, you don't need to modify where you're using it. You only modify the source. And whatever thing you put there again, as you can see, it will change automatically. You don't need to touch where you're using it. But assuming you are not doing it like this, you are not using variable, and you are copying them, you are doing copy and paste to different section there. Anytime you need to modify it, you have to go to everywhere you've used that color and change it one by one. But I really love variable for something like this because I can quickly modify the stuff in one place, not that I'll be doing it in different places there like that. So let me move these things side by side. So the next thing we need to do here, I'll still come back to the body. I'm not done yet, but I want to give this main the background so that I can see what is going on. So this main is going to have a background color of that white, and if I save it, you see that this is the main, because I want you to see what is going on based on the design we're working on. So this is the main. The main is having white, and that's what I'm doing here. But if you look at our own main, it's not like the main here, because the main have a particular width on it, so it's not really touching the edge. The same thing on the mobile too. If you look at it on the mobile, it's not touching the edge. There is a little gap out there. So how do we do this thing? This is where the width and all these width related property comes in, because now we don't want this thing to touch the edge. We want to give it a particular width. So what can we do here? So on this thing, we can give it a width maybe around that 90%. So we can give it width of 90%, because I don't want the stuff to be 100. Don't forget, it's always going to be based on the parent. I said the width should be 90. 90 of what? Of body, because this main is inside body. And whatever the width of the body, that's what main is going to use by default at its own width. So if you look at it, the width is 90%. But if you look at the original design, the space is being distributed between this left and the right, not that it is on one side like this. So how do we do that? There are different ways of doing this thing, but I'm only going to focus on one in another class that we're going to be having later on. So if it's not following this pattern, I will mention the other way of doing it. So we're going to do it from the body. And how do we move things to the center? You know this one already, by displaying your body as flex. So once you display the body as flex, you know that the main inside it is going to be flex item. And since the main is flex item, you know you can now align and you can justify to center. No, align is vertical since the direction is row, and justify is horizontal since the direction is row. And which one do I need to use now to move from left to right or right to left? That's our justify content. But justify is talking about horizontal. And if I use flex end, you know that it's going to take it to the end. But that's not what we want. I'm just repeating what we talked about at the last class here. If I use flex start, which is going to be what is there before. But the what I need right now is center, because I want it to move it to the center of the box. And as you can see, the spacing on the left and the right are distributed equally. And the reason why you are seeing it like this is because we've reduced the width. If the width is 100, you will not see anything, because we are saying it should just cover the entire box. And since it already covered the entire box, it will not show as if this thing is at the center. But it's actually there. But because this thing has already covered up the entire box, you will not see anything. But if I use like 60%, you see it a lot. As you can see, that this thing now is now this one. But look at what is happening. Look at the image. It's going outside of the box. And that's the reason why I talked about some of the resets for the image that time. But this image is not supposed to be going outside of this parent. Let me disable this background color, or let me change it to something else. No, let me just leave it. So if you look at the image, it's going outside. And the reason why it's going outside is because all the image used to maintain their size. They don't care about the parent. And that's why I talked about this in that time, that you can do some of the reset for this image. And that reset is this max width. You don't want your image to go more than its parent. Whatever the parent is having, that's where it's going to stop. So if the parent is going down, it will go down. If the parent increase, it will increase. And if I save this thing now by using this max width on the image, you see that the image too is going to reduce according to what we give to this main here, which is 60%. Because can you see now, the image is not balanced. So there's some resets you need to do on some of these elements so that they don't misbehave when you are changing the size of some of the elements. Before, I don't need to do that because the box is really wide. But now that I've reduced the box and it's now less than that image, the image will not go down. The image will maintain its original size, which is what is happening right now. And as you can see, maybe now we wonder that what is going on. Why is this one going outside? It's because the image have its own size. The parent too have its own size. And the parent size is lesser than the image size. So since the parent is having a lesser size, then the image will outgrow it and it will go outside. But you don't want this thing to happen. Anytime you have image, the image must not go past wherever you are using it. Even though it can go smaller or it can go bigger, but don't go more than the original size of the parent. And that's the reason why this reset is there, which is what this max width. It's not width though. The width too will work, but it will affect the down image here. Because if I use width, it means they must always be 100% of the parent. But when you say max width, maintain your original size, but don't go more than whatever the container where you are being put into. So if the container is small, you too must go down. Don't use your original size again. Go down along with the container. If the container increase, increase with the container. So if I decrease the container to this 50%, that image too will reduce
Hello
so that
to
it matches what the parent is using. Yes. Yes. Oh, what do you want to say? The time is going on. Okay, let me continue.
yeah, please, sir. What's the difference between this width and the max width?
I've already explained this thing before.
Can you
I
hear me,
just
sir?
mention it again now. Width is a
Hello, sir.
definite size. Width is a definite size. You are telling this thing that
Hello.
it must. Please let me explain it. Just width is a definite size. When you say width, you are giving this element that it must maintain that particular size. So when you say width should be 60, what you are saying is that the element must have a width of 60. But when you say max width is not really saying that that element is going to maintain that 60. What you are just saying is that it must not go more than 60. The size can actually be less than 60, but if the image is increasing, it must not go more than that particular value. That's what max width is there for. But when you say width will maintain that particular value. It will not go less than that value and it will not go more than that value. That's width. When you are using width, whatever value you are using there, that element must maintain that value. It must not go less and it must not go more than that value. That's max. That's width. But when you are dealing with max, max is doesn't care whether the image is less or is bigger, but the only thing that is looking at is that whatever the size that you give this image, it must not pass this particular value that you have. So when you say max is 60, the image can actually be 50, it can be 40, it can be 10, but that image must not expand more than 60. So when your image is not going more than 60, it will stop at 60. That's max. The same thing with mean too. You just reverse it. Mean is just that this one too, it doesn't care what is the size. The only thing it's looking at is that the size that you are giving it must not be less than whatever your main width. If it is max, it must not be more than whatever your max width. But it doesn't care whether it maintain that value or not. Like what I mean by that is that it can have a lesser value, it can have a bigger value, but that value must not be more than whatever you are using for your max width. So the value can change when you are dealing with max or when you are dealing with mean, but it must not go more than whatever value you put there. But when you say width, that width maintain the value. It will not go down, it will not go up. So that's the difference between the three of them. So this one
But
here,
what if we are giving value for the width and the height?
then you use width. Once you know the whatever value, then you go with the width. But here now, I don't know the width because this one is talking about all the image. It's not just the first image or the second one. That's what I'm using this one. I know that this image you can increase or you can decrease,
Okay.
but anytime the parent reduce, you must not go more than. That's, don't forget the percentage is dealing with parent. Anytime you're using percentage, it's going to calculate it based on the parent. So what you're saying here is that whatever the width of this element, it must not go more than the total width of its parent. That's the 100% are there, and that's what is going to happen if I. This is the original image here. But once I save this stuff here now, you see that it will maintain its original size. You see that it's not 100. But once the container is less than a particular size, your image too must go down to that one. So when you say width, it will fool the parent. The width will must
Okay,
always
sir.
the width must always maintain that size you put there. As you can see now, the width must always maintain that value. That's width. But
Yeah.
when you say max width doesn't care whether it cover up the parent or not. The only thing it's looking at is that the image or whatever the element you are using the max width on must not go past its parent. That's what it's doing there. It must not go past whatever value you specify here. It doesn't care whether it actually full its parent or it not full. As you can see this image, it's not up to this container right now. But if the container is less than the image, then the image must go down with the parent. But if the image is less than the container, then the max width will not do anything with it because it's only looking at that. Since it's only looking at that, you are not more than the parent, and since you are not more than the parent already, it will not do anything. The only time it will limit this image is when it's trying to outgrow the container. So if I reduce the container here now from 90 to around that 30, you see that the image too will go down, because the image is actually bigger than this width of 30%. But because of the max width that we are using here, that it must not go past its parent, that's why it's going down. But if I disable this line, as you can see, the image will actually go to its original size. So max width is not forcing it. The only thing it will force is that you must not go more than the container. But it can be of any size, so but don't go more than the container. That's max width. But if it is width, maintain the container. Don't go less and don't go more. Width we always maintain whatever size that you give them, and it will not go less than that. So that's the way this one works. But let me return this into 90% so that we can continue with the other stuff there like that. So let me complete this the main. We need
Okay.
padding. Now we are not done with this one. We are not done with the body. We need to align item to center. So why do we need to align items to
Thank
center?
you, sir.
If you look at it, please, time is going. Oh. Let's complete this thing, then you can ask question. I don't want this video to be longer, this 1 hour already. But it will take a long time to upload this thing. So let me explain what is going on first, then after the class you can ask the question once I pause the video. So here, when you are talking about the align and justify, I've explained this one. Justify now is the horizontal, because the direction is row, and the align is going to be this vertical here. So we've already centered it in the horizontal direction here. So we need to do it for the align too, which is this vertical, to move it to the center. But this thing is not going to go to the center. It's not going to go to the center if I use center here, and it's because of the way body work by default. So body, as you can see at the top, is still there. It did not really go to the center in the horizontal form there, or the vertical. And the reason why it's not going to the center is because your body is actually stopping where the content is stopping. So which means the body is actually here. The body is not down here. Even though the color is covering this entire stuff, the body is not down here. So how do you make sure that the body is actually covering the minimum of this your browser height? So here we can use this mean height, which is something I've explained to. Mean height means this is the same thing, it's just like the weight, but this one now you are talking about the height. Mean height means that this content oh, this is your minimum height. You must not go less than whatever value I specify here. So here now I'm using 100 VH, which is going to be 100% of the height of my browser. So that's what I'm saying here. What I'm saying now is the body now, your minimum height, you can increase so, but the minimum must be 100 VH. You can't go less than. So the height of the body must not be less than this one, but it can go more than this. Look at, I'm not using height too, because if you use height, it means it must not go less and it must not go more. But when you say mean, minimum means that it must not go less, but it can go more. The same thing with max too. When you use max, this one doesn't care whether it's going down, but it must not go more than this. So you need to know the difference between mean, max, and the width or the height are there like that, depending on the one you are using. So the one I need right now is mean, because I want it to have a minimum of 100 VH. What is 100 VH here? 100 VH here is the 100% of the entire browser height. So this is the entire browser height. That's what I'm saying here, that the body must maintain a minimum height of this. Later on it can increase or if there is a lot of other content here, but it must not go less than the height of the browser. And once the height of the browser change, it will recalculate everything, because I've already explained how VH work, because it's based on the viewport height, which is the vertical direction of the browser, while the VW is talking about the horizontal one, which is the 100%. So this is the VW. So 100 VW is the 100% of this browser in the horizontal form, while 100 VH is the vertical one. And don't forget, it's dealing with percentage. If I use 50 VH, that means 50% of the entire screen. And here now, if I save it, you see that it's now going to go to the center, because the body is now having the height of the browser. And if I reduce the height of the browser, then it will recalculate the height automatically like this. But for now, I don't need that, so I just need to use 100 VH. And as you can see, using this align item to the center, because if this align item center is not there, you see that it's just full the entire stuff here. But aligning it to center will make sure that vertically the content is at the center, while justifying make sure that horizontally this content too is center there like that. But if you look inside the box, there is no space at all the content are just jam packed to the edge of the box, so we need to use our padding, which is going to give us the spacing inside the box. And as you can see, we have that space there. The next thing we need to use is border radius, because the edge of the box is having some kind of radius here. So I'm going to use 1 rem for the radius, and once this thing is done loading there, it's going to show on the page there. Another thing that is here, yes, so as you can see, so another thing that is here is that there is a border there. So if you look at it, there is a strip line around everything, which is this black line. This is our border, so which means this box is actually having a border. So here we have border 1 pixels, then solid black here, so which is either our black color that is coming from the variable. You don't use this thing like this, so you have to use var. When you want to call your variable, the variable must be inside var, not that you just call the name. It will not work. Or if you call the name, it must be inside this var. And as you can see now, that line is down there, which is going to look like the design that we have there. So there's a line around everything. But apart from this line, we have a shadow going on there. So we have a sharp shadow going on towards the right of the box. But this box is not too big, so let me use 80% like this. Let me use 80% for now so that it can be smaller. And then here we have the box shadow. So the box shadow is moving towards the right. So since you're moving towards the right, on your x, you are going to use positive value. So, and again too, if you look at the horizontal or you look at the vertical one, it's moving downward. So this one is positive. When it is going up, that's negative. When it is going towards the left, that's negative too. But if it's going towards the right and it's going down, that's positive value for both the x and the y axis. So for this one, I'm going to use 5, or let me use 10 for the x. So it's moving towards the right by 10, and it's moving downward by 5. And if I save it here, we are going to see the shadow at the back of this box. Why is this VS Code? First time. Okay, 7 minutes done. So as you can see, it's going to create this. Let me move it down a little bit. Maybe let me try that 10 too for y. Yes. So as you can see, on this first value here is for this side. So this first value is for this side. Where my arrow? So this first value now is how you are moving it on the y, on the x-axis, and this second value is how you are moving it on the y-axis. So here, if you look at it, I did not specify color because I know that by default the color will be black. If the color is not black, you need to specify the color. So the same thing too, I did not supply the border, I did not supply the radius, because if you look at the original design, it's not having anything like blur radius. The color is not blur at all. But if the color is blur, you know that you need to apply the blur radius. For example, here now, if I use 15 pixels at the blur radius, as you can see, it's going to blur it out. But this is not how the design is. The design is not having any blur at all. And by default, it is 0. So which is going to apply the way it is on the design there. Because whatever the design gave you there is what you follow. Not that you just be applying the property based on your own. You follow the design. So the design is using it, you put it. If it's not using it, then you remove whatever it, or you don't even apply it at all. So the first value is how we are shifting it on the x. The second value is how we are shifting it on the y. And if I use negative value, it will reverse, which is going to take it to the opposite side. So negative goes towards the left, positive goes towards the right hand side. The same thing for this y-axis too. So negative goes up, y positive comes down. So as you can see, the design has been changed because of this negative sign, but that's not the way it is. So I'm going to reverse it back to the positive value so that it can follow the design that we have there. So the next thing we need to do, there is to talk to this our image. So how do we talk to the image? So inside this image wrapper, so why am I calling this? Inside this image wrapper, I have the image. What did I want to do? The width of the image should be 100%. So what I'm saying here is that whatever the width of this image should match the weight of its container. What is the container here? The container is this image wrapper, which is coming from the arrangements that we have there. So if you look at it, we have a section, which is this image wrapper. So the image that is inside it, that's what I'm saying here, that the image should cover up 100% of that container. So whatever the width of this container now, whatever the width that I'm changing it to, that's what the image we always use. So if I say the width of the container should just be maybe like 200 pixels, you see that the image too will go down with the image. So the image too will go down with the container, because the image is having width of 100%, and it will always follow its container. It will never go more than the container there like that. So because the container go down, it have to go down too. If the container goes up, it have to go up, but I don't need to increase because the container is already using the original size that I want from this parent, so I don't need to do that. But in order for this image to be able to cover up that place, I'm forcing the width to be 100%, which means it will never go less than the parent, and it will never go more than the parent. That's what the width. But you know, if you are using min, which is what we use at the top, or if you are using max, it means it must not go more than the parent if the parent is small. But if the parent is big and that element is not up to the parent, it will not expand the image to cover the parent. But with this width of 100%, it will always expand it so that it maintain the size of the parent there. And the other thing we need to do is there is border radius, because the image is having a radius which I'm going to use around that 0.75 rem, which is 12 pixels. So as the border radius, and as you can see, there is going to be radius on the image here like that. I'm applying it on the image, not on the container, because if you apply it on the container, it will not affect the image like that. So the image that you have to apply it on, the element that you want to curve, is what you are going to apply it on, not the parent. So look at it, I'm targeting the image that is inside image wrapper. That's why it's not affecting the down one here, because I have two images, but the only one I'm targeting is the one that is coming from here. It's not going to touch this one because they have different selector there, and since I'm targeting them based on the this selector, it will never affect any other image that is outside of this image wrapper. But if I'm using image, it will affect everything automatically. Can you see now? It will affect this down one too, and that's the reason why you see that I'm using this selector here, so that it doesn't touch the image that is down. Because when you say image, it will touch everything, but here now I'm only looking for the image that is inside this image wrapper, so it will not touch any other image on the page apart from the one that is inside this image wrapper there. So let me continue. The next thing we have there is this a tag, which is inside this class of content here. So let me give this one a class, because I always love to select them based on class. So I'm going to call it chip, and that's the name I'm giving it. So selecting the chip from here, or first, before I get it chip, let me select our content, because we need to be selecting them according to the way you arrange your stuff. So content wrapper like this. So this content wrapper now, look at it, is this, let me give background color so that you see what is going on there. Let me give it a background color of red. And once I give it a background color of red, everything here, this is it here. Is the one that is grouping all this content together. But if you look at it, I want evil space around them. So look at it. The space here is the same here, is the same here, and is the same here. So since I want them to be of this equal spacing, I can actually display this in as flex. So once I display it as flex, don't forget by default it's going to place them side by side, which is not what we want. As you can see, it's placing them side by side, but that's not what we want. What do we need to do? We need to change the direction. And how do we change the direction? We use this column direction. And once you do it, everything goes back. But you might be thinking that nothing is changing here now. But now I can apply my gap without talking to each one of them. If you want to do it without using the flex, you have to talk to each one of them to apply margin bottom. But I don't need to do that with flex. I can do it directly from the parent and it will apply it to all the items inside it automatically. So if I save this one now, as you can see, each one of the items is going to put that spacing in between them automatically. So the spacing here, the spacing here, the spacing here, and the spacing here, all of them are going to be the same thing. So this one is not having background, so let me remove it so that everything can go back to the way it is here. So the next thing we need to select is the chip, but that's what follows. That's the next thing that follows it. So inside this content wrapper, the next thing I have the chip. The next one is going to be date. The next one is H1, followed by the description and so forth like that. So that's how you'll be targeting them according to the way you arranged it from the HTML. So what do we have for this one? What we have there is this background of this same yellow and the color of this black along with the padding and border radius there. So what we need to do, let me put the background color first. So the background color is going to be that our yellow because we are using variable. So here now, that's the background color. The color should be that black, which is what is there before, but this is just waste of our typing. So I will go and do it on the, I will do it directly on the body. So I don't need to do it again or do it directly from here. So that I don't need to type it again. Don't forget, all these texts, they are going to inherit color from their parent. So since I'm doing it from the main, everything that is inside main will pick the color automatically. So I don't need to start doing it again and again inside each item. So all of them should just maintain that black from their parents like that, except this H1 that is having a separate color when you are on top of it like that. So if I save this one, as you can see, it's going to have this, something is going on here. So but this chip here is not supposed to get to this edge. It's supposed to stop where the content is stopping. You are going to see how to fix this one there, because what we're going to be using here is the width property. So first of all, let me apply the padding, because the content, if you look at the L, is jam-packed with the edge of the box. But if you look at the original design, it is not like that. So what can we do there? We can apply our padding, which I'm going to use these 8 pixels like that. And as you can see, it's going to have that spacing. We need border radius, which is the curve there. The same thing here too. I'm going to use 8 pixels. VS Code, don't slow down. Okay, 0.5 rem like this, which is really too much. 0.25, which is 4 pixels. It's just going to add this a bit of tiny stuff, but there's a problem here. Look at it here. The gap in between this section at the top and this down one here is not the same thing as what we have here. So look at it. There's a lot of gap here between this section at the top and the section down here. But where is it coming from? It's coming from this main. And if you look at it, is the one that is holding this, the one at the top here and the one down here. So there are different ways of applying this in if you don't want to use flex. If you don't want to use flex and gap from the parent, what we can do is inside this content here, we can use our margin top, because we want to create the space at the top of this box here. So if I use around that one area, it's going to create a space at the top of the box here. We are talking about the content box, which is this entire box here that is holding all this content here. But I don't want it to jump back to the top. If I want to do it from the parent, we have to use flex and you use gap to give them a space. But if you don't want to do it from the parent, maybe there is not much of a content inside it, you can actually do it for each item. And here now I'm doing the margin top, so which means I want the spacing from this top one and that one here to be this one area. So that means the space at the top of this box should be 1 rem. Let me put the background color so that you see what is going on there. So without this margin, this is how it's going to look like. As you can see, this is where it's stopping there. But now applying the margin is going to create more space at the top, and that's what is going on inside this content wrapper, which is the box that holds all this content. But if you look at it, this box here is actually going more than what we want it to be. Why is it doing that? Is because we display the parent as flex. Anytime you display the parent as flex and you flex direction to column, everything is going to be stretched. What is happening there is this: align item is stretch. Don't forget, align item is always stretch. And what is that stretch doing? It's going to stretch all the items so that they cover up the appearance, and that's what is happening here. But how do you correct it? You can actually correct it so that they are not stretched there. What you can use is flex start. So which means everything will be on the left side instead of them stretch. When you say stretch, it will cover up whatever the size of the parent. But when you say flex start, everything will go to the start of its parent. And when you say flex end, don't forget, everything will go to the end of the parent. I explained all this thing at the last class there when I was talking about flex. So look at what is happening right now. But what I need is flex start because I want everything to jump back to the left side, not stretching across there. The same thing is happening to all this one. Once you give them background, you see that they are not stretching again. But if you don't use this flex start, all of them are going to stretch. But if you don't want to use this, because in CSS, there are different ways of doing things. What if you are not using flex and you are having the same stuff and you don't want the stuff to go more than this? You can actually do the same thing by using width on the element itself. So you can use the width to just be max content. So max content is talking about whatever the maximum content that is inside that particular parent. This is the parent. What is the maximum content there? Which is this learning. So whenever that learning is stopping, that's where this one too is going to stop. As you can see, this is another way of solving the problem. This one, you can use it when the parent is not displayed as flex, and you cannot even use flex start, because at some time, if you use flex start, it will destroy some other thing you have on the page. So you can use this one to do it. But if you don't want to use this one, then you can use flex start from the parent, and it's still going to give you the same result. Flex start, what it's going to do is that to put everything to the left side instead of it to stretch because of the aligned item. But if you cannot use this thing, maybe you're already moving everything to center, or you've already do some stuff that you cannot use this one, then you can use the weight on the element itself, and you use the mass content so that it doesn't go more than the weight of the content that is inside it there. So this is the chip that we have there. But the font too, we need to update it. So the font weight should be 500, because don't forget we connect to the online, and I think it's let me use this 800. Yeah, it's too much. Let me use 600 like this. Yeah, I think it's okay like this. So for the title, the font weight, so that's no, let's publish. I don't need to do anything with this publish. The color is okay already. This is what I'm talking about. So the only one I need to update here is this, which is the H1. And for this, I don't know the size there, but the weight, the size is really smaller compared to what is here. So I need to reduce the font size. So what normally used to be there is around that 32 pixels, but I'm going to change it to 24 pixels like this. And now it's now more than what about 18 pixels? Yeah, so it's going to reduce it, and the font weight should be 800, because it's kind of a thick. Yes, so which is going to be thicker like this. And anything you're on top of this H1, anytime you are over on the H1, we want the color to be something else, which is going to be yellow according to the design. I'm not adding this in myself. That's how it's supposed to be. Anytime you over on this VS Code, don't slow down. So anytime you over on the H1, the color should change. This is what I'm doing there. It's still loading. Once this thing is done, the color, yeah. So anytime you're on top of it, the color should change to this. But you might be thinking, where do I get this thing from? The design. It's coming from the design. This design will give you how some of your element is going to behave anytime you over on them. That's what we call overstay. Can you see here? So this is what the hand is saying. So anytime you're on your H1, this is the color. But when you are not on the H1, the color is going to be that particular black that you have there like that. So let me quickly work on the last part. Let me quickly work on, no, it's not the last part. We still have this paragraph which I need to work with. Jeez. The way VS Code they work today. Okay, so I have this p tag with a class description here. So the p tag with the class description, the color should be that gray color. The color should be gray color. What do we call it? Okay, it is E, not A, the gray color. So this is this one here. So the color is gray. It's not like what is there, which is what we have there. As you can see, the color is gray. I'm not changing the font size because that's what is there automatically. By default, the browser is using 16 pixels. This is the only thing I need to change on this one before we move to the avatar section, which is this avatar. What did I call it? Chief VS Code.
Div.
No, no, no. That's not the name. The class, your avatar group, because you have to use the name of your class. You type another thing, it's not
Okay.
matching what you have on the page. It will not work. Oh. So if you can't remember the class you use, just go back there and look at the name. So the thing is avatar group. So let me give you background color, because I think this is where you're having problem. So for the design there, so the color, let me just give it red. By default, look at what is happening because we've already make everything to be flex. That's why I told you that time that sometimes this thing is going to affect some element on the page that you don't want. Because if I disable it, can you see where it's getting? This is where your div supposed to be getting to. But because of this flex start, it will move everything to the left, which is now affecting this down one here. So if you know that this one will affect the stuff, you can actually use this method that I use on this line 67 to fix this learning that is going across here. But we can fix this one too so that it cover up his parent. We just need to give it the weight. If it's not covering his parent, you can actually force it too. But I just say the weight should be 100%, as you can see. So 100%, don't forget percentage is talking about parent. So whatever the percentage of the or whatever the size of the parent, it will just take it automatically like that. So you can actually fix it like this too. But what we want to do is that we want to move this Greg and this image to be side by side. So how do you do it? It's just by displaying these elements as flex. And once you display as flex, it's going to move them side by side, but Greg is supposed to be at the center. So what do we need to do there? We need to use our align items. Why am I using align items? Because we are in the row direction. And you know that vertical now is align and justify is horizontal. So I don't need the horizontal. The only thing I want to change here is the vertical because I want this grid to come down. And the movement here is from up to downward. And since it's up to downward, that's vertical. And since you are working with the row, it means align item. But if you are working with a column, you know that that is going to be justified. So you need to know the direction. Based on the direction, you call this your align or justify to change whatever you need to change there. So this one is supposed to be at the center. And this one is smart. Whatever content that is small for that side, it will take it to the center of the one that is having a bigger height there or having a bigger width. That's how it works. You don't need to do anything. Once you say center, it will look at the biggest element there and it will move all those one that is not up to that to the center of the stuff there. But if you look at it, they are two jam packed together. There is no space. No, that's the gap. So if you are dealing with flex, just gap it. So I'm going to use one rem to create the spacing in between the two items there. So I don't need this background color, it's just for you to see what is going on the page. And once I save it, you see that the design is going to look like what we have here. But the image is too big. So the image is too big. So now we can talk to it. So avatar now, group, we have the image inside this one too. So I want the weight. Now I'm giving it a definite weight. I'm not saying max, I'm not saying min. I'm giving it a definite weight. And what is the weight? I don't know. So I will just guess. If it work, I will leave it. If it doesn't work, I will change until I see the one that is okay for the design. So I will try this. Let me try 90 pixels first. So this one is even going more than what I need.
Well, sir, you have called the avatar group twice. Why can't you do it inside this open here?
Please, I did not do it twice. So look at it very well. I did not do it twice. This one is selecting the
Okay, that's
image that is inside. So they are not
okay.
the same thing. Oh. This one is talking about the grouping. This one is talking about the image that is inside the grouping. They are not the same thing. Oh. So
Mm, okay.
this one is only targeting the image. But I'm saying the image that is inside group. I don't want to, because if I do it now, it will be affecting all the image on the page. But that's not what I want. I only want it to affect the image that is inside the avatar group, which is the same thing I'm doing here too. Here. If you look at it, I'm not selecting image wrapper. I'm only selecting the image that is inside it. If you look at the CSS selector too, this is what is targeting, but it is inside this one. So they are not the same thing. Because this one is just talking about the grouping, the group, while this one is talking about the image that is inside the group. So, and if you can see now, if I expand this my design, can you see it's not good? Why is it doing like this? It's because I did not limit the width. Don't forget what I did here is that on the container itself, which is that main, what I did that the width should be 80%, and that is what it's doing here. But we can actually use that max width now to make sure that this particular content or this particular box is not going past a particular element or a particular width. I don't care whether you increase or you decrease, but whatever value that I'm giving here, you must not go more than that value. That 80%, once it go more than that value, it will not go again. So here now, if I use 500 pixels, by default, the weight will be 80%. So it will calculate the width of 80%. So if that width is less than 500, it will use it. But if the width, by the time it's not calculating this 80%, is greater than 500, then it will not go more than 500. It will default it to 500. That's what the max is doing. When you say width, it will maintain the value you give them. But don't forget, this thing will always change based on the percentage, because if the parent change, the percentage have to recalculate its new value, and that's what is happening here. The reason why it was working before is because the size of the browser is small, but now if I increase the size, the container too will increase because of that 80%. It will recalculate its new value. But now I need to limit the width. It can increase, so it can still decrease, but I don't want it to increase more than this particular 500 px. That's what max width is doing. 80% can change. I don't care whether it change or it's not changing. But the only thing I want here is that that 80%, by the time it's not calculating the value, it must not go more than 500. So now if I save it, anytime you have a width of the browser that is going more than whatever it needs to go more than that, once this thing get there, it will stop at this 500, which is still kind of bigger because I increase my screen here, so that you can see what is going on. Because if I go back to 100, this is 100. This is how it's supposed to be by default, but because I increase the font of my browser, that's why it look as if this thing is big. It's not big, oh, it's the browser stuff. It's just the zoom, so that you can see what is going on when I was on that small screen. But going back to the 100%, this is what is going to show, which I can even reduce this thing to around that 400, but it's still wide more than. So what I'm saying here is that this thing can expand, it can reduce, but it must not expand more than 400. That 80%, once it's more than 400 pixels, this max width will stop it at 400. It will not go more than 400 again. But if this one is not here, you see that this thing will always expand up to that 80%. But I don't want the 80% to go more than this 400. That's what I'm using this max width for. Max width is what you can use to limit a particular element for going more than a particular value. So when you give it a value, that element will not go more than that value. No matter what you are doing with the stuff, no matter how you are increasing the stuff with width, it will never leave this max width. Max width have power over width. The same thing with min width too. Both of them have power over the width. So when you say something must not go less than a particular value and you give it a width that is less than that, it will not go less, because the mean width is here to correct the width. The same thing with max width too. When you say the width should be 1000 pixels and you say the max width should be 400, it will never go more than 400. It will abandon that 1000 pixels. That's how max width, mean width, and width works. When you don't use max and min with width, width will use whatever particular value you gave it to it. But if you are using max and min with it, it will never use a value that is more than max, and it will never use a value that is less than min. That's how it works. So it works for both height and it works for both height and the width there. And as you can see, we have the same thing just like the way it is on the design. And if you move on top of this P or this H1, it's going to do this thing. But there is something going on here that I notice. Yeah, look at their own. It actually gets here, but our own is not. Yeah, it's still the same thing. Every. Yeah, the text is still the same thing. When you stop at this every, website, whatever stuff. So it's still the same thing. Let me just increase it a little bit so that you can see the stuff. So you two now, you are going to replicate this design again.
Sir, but
Shift.
hold on. Can you see what's happening here? The HTML here